Rachel Maddow's voice was calm when the segment opened. "This conversation may make some of you uncomfortable," she said. "It's not designed to entertain. It's designed to confront." She looked directly into the camera. "And it begins now." The screen cut to Pam Bondi walking onto the set. No smile. No wave. No attempt to soften her presence. She carried herself like a verdict, steady, shaped, and already decided. Rachel stood to greet her. They shook hands. Firm. Flat. Then sat. The desk between them felt like more than furniture. It felt like a line neither woman intended to cross first. Rachel opened with control. "You've been called many things," she said. "Loyalist. Legal strategist. Powers defender. Do any of those resonate with you?" Pam didn't blink. "No, because none of them account for the cost." Rachel nodded. "And what cost is that?" Pam replied. "Walking into rooms like this one and knowing I'm already guilty in the eyes of the host." Rachel didn't flinch. "I don't assign guilt. I ask questions." Pam said. "That's what makes it harder." The tension wasn't dramatic. It was dense, like something too solid to cut through. Only sit inside. Rachel leaned forward. "You've defended policies, people, and claims that many in this audience view as corrosive to democracy. Do you see it differently?" Pam's answer came cold and clear. "I see it as defending the right to be unpopular without being erased." Rachel tilted her head. "Unpopular is not the same as wrong." Pam replied. "And wrong is not the same as unlawful." There was no laughter, no rhythm, just a slow descent into a space where neither woman blinked, and the table between them felt smaller by the minute. Rachel asked, "Do you believe the truth matters more than loyalty?" Pam answered, "I believe the truth doesn't arrive in a straight line, and I don't jump off the train just because people are shouting at the platform." Rachel said, "And if the train is heading toward a cliff?" Pam looked straight at her. "Then I check the brakes. I don't jump for optics." Behind the cameras, the room was silent. Producers stopped speaking into headsets. Camera operators adjusted their breathing more than their lenses. Because this wasn't an interview anymore. It was something harder. Two kinds of discipline, refusing to yield. Rachel Maddow set her notes down. Not to pause. To make a point. "You've said in the past that your job isn't to pick sides, it's to defend process," she said. "But at what point does process become complicity?" Pam Bondi's expression didn't shift. "When people decide outcomes before they've heard arguments. That's when justice ends. And when performance begins." Rachel nodded once. "But what if the argument itself harms people while it's being made?" Pam replied, evenly. "Then people have to decide if they want truth or comfort. You can't have both at the same time." The air inside the studio had thickened, not with hostility, with presence. Rachel wasn't rattled. She was recalibrating. Because Pam wasn't resisting. She was enduring. Rachel tried again. "Some of the people you've defended have lied. Repeatedly. Do you still believe in defending them?" Pam didn't hesitate. "I believe in defending the right to be heard, even when the lie is louder than the correction." Rachel asked, "And what if the correction never comes?" Pam said, "Then maybe the silence says more than the noise ever could." There was no applause, no laughter, no signal to reset the tone, because no one was performing. And that's what made it hard to watch. It wasn't a clash of tempers. It was a refusal to collapse. Rachel picked up her pen again, tapped it once on the desk, asked, "What do you want people to take from this conversation?" Pam didn't blink. "That I didn't flinch. That I didn't wait to be liked. And that I said what I came to say, without decoration." Rachel looked at her carefully and asked, "Even if it means walking out of here with fewer allies than you came in with?" Pam leaned forward. "I didn't walk in with allies. I walked in with clarity. That's enough." The clock in the control booth hit 21 minutes. The producer leaned toward the director and whispered, "Should we cut to break?" The director shook her head. "Not unless Maddow signals." Back on set, Rachel didn't flinch. She was past the structure now, past the segment timing, the cue cards, the arc. Pam Bondi hadn't played the part they prepared for. She had answered every question like a bench trial. No emotion, no performance, just presence. And Rachel was beginning to realize something she hadn't expected. Pam didn't come here to win the moment. She came to make sure the moment couldn't walk away clean. Rachel folded her hands on the desk. I want to be clear, she said. This isn't about disagreement. This is about accountability. Pam replied, and I want to be clear, I don't need you to make that distinction. I live in it. Rachel sat still. The line wasn't aggressive. It was harder than that. It was real. And Rachel Maddow, who had made a career out of dissecting narratives, calling out evasions, unmasking spin, was now sitting across from someone who wasn't spinning anything. Just saying it. Without the polish. Without the apology. And without asking for the room's approval. She tried a different approach. Tell me something, Rachel said. What does it feel like to walk into rooms like this one and know you've already been written into a headline? Pam looked her in the eye. It feels like walking into a courtroom where the jury claps before the case begins. Rachel blinked. Pam added, and still deciding to present the evidence anyway. Rachel nodded, then asked, softer now, don't you ever get tired of having to defend your existence before your arguments? Pam's voice dropped. I get tired of people pretending that's not what they're asking me to do. In the audience, no one shifted. No one checked their phone. No one laughed. Because what was happening on stage didn't allow for that. Not anymore. The energy had changed. No longer two people facing off. Now it was something else. Two truths that refused to yield to optics. Two kinds of intelligence that had no interest in pleasing each other. Two women, both accustomed to shaping space, now letting that space press back. Rachel broke the silence again. I don't think you're wrong about everything, she said. Pam replied, and I don't need you to say that to make me real. Rachel added, but I do think you've become a symbol for something you don't entirely control. Pam nodded. That's the price of standing still while people rewrite you in real time. Rachel said, and you're willing to pay it. Pam answered, I already did. In the control room, the producer whispered, we're over. She hasn't called for break. The director said, we're not breaking. They are. Rachel looked at the camera, then back at Pam. Do you regret anything you've defended? Pam was quiet for a moment, then said, only the times I softened my tone so people wouldn't hear the full strength of what I meant. Rachel let the silence hold. Then finally, she said, that's the last question. Pam nodded. She stood, did not shake hands, did not glance at the audience, did not adjust her jacket. She walked off stage like she walked on, composed, complete, and unapologetically unchanged. The red light above the camera turned off. The studio didn't return to normal. It hovered. The crew didn't speak. The audience didn't shift. Even Rachel Maddow didn't move, not right away. She sat there, her hands folded, eyes unfocused, staring at the chair Pam Bondi had just vacated. That chair didn't feel empty. It felt full of something heavier than performance. It felt like presence that refused to be undone. A stagehand finally broke the stillness, whispering, do we reset? Rachel answered without looking up. Not yet, because the room wasn't ready. And she wasn't either. She didn't need a second take. She needed a second to breathe. Because Pam hadn't disrupted the show. She had drained it of its usual logic. She had given nothing away. No anger. No retreat. No drama. And somehow, that had been more disarming than any outburst could have been. Later, in the edit bay, the team watched the footage back. The lead editor leaned forward, then sat back, then finally said, it's not brutal because of what she said. It's brutal because of what we couldn't cut from her. No one disagreed. Online, no footage leaked. The segment didn't air. But whispers surfaced. A few audience members wrote vague, unsettled posts. Bondi didn't get kicked off. She just wouldn't hand them a version of herself they could use. Most honest thing I've seen on a stage. Not because it was true. Because it wouldn't bend. Maddow never lost control. That's what made it harder. But no one fought about it. They just shared it. And let it echo. Rachel never addressed the segment publicly. But something shifted in how she hosted after that. She interrupted less. She circled back more. And once, mid-interview, when a guest made a polished point too neatly, Rachel paused and asked, is that what you actually believe? Or is that what fits the screen better? The guest didn't answer. And Rachel let that silence sit. Because now she knew what it felt like when someone sat in the space without needing to be received. And she respected it. Pam Bondi, weeks later, gave a closed-door talk at a private university. When asked about the Maddow interview, she said, "I didn't lose anything that day. I just refused to make the win visible." A student asked, "Would you go back?" Pam replied, "No, I never left." Here is part 5 of Pam Bondi kicked off Rachel Maddow's show after brutal clash. The broadcast didn't run. The story didn't trend. But what happened in that room keeps moving, not through outrage, but through the quiet places where people start rethinking what power really sounds like. It started in classrooms. A journalism professor in Philadelphia shared the transcript with her students. No names, no context, just the words laid flat. She asked, "Who controlled the room?" One student said, "The host," until the questions stopped working. Another said, "The guest," because she didn't try to win the room. She just didn't give it anything extra. And one student at the back, quiet until now, said, "They both held. That's what made it brutal." The professor nodded, then asked them to read it again, slower this time. In a political speechwriting office in D.C., a junior aide read a blog post that quoted Bondi's response. "I didn't flinch. I didn't wait to be liked. And I said what I came to say, without decoration." She printed it, taped it to the corner of her monitor. The senior strategist saw it and rolled his eyes. But when he walked past later, he read it again and didn't say a word. Rachel Maddow didn't speak about the segment. But one evening, weeks later, she appeared on a different program, one with no studio audience, no laughter, no lights to shield discomfort. The host asked, "What's something that changed you recently?" Rachel paused, then said, "I interviewed someone who never raised her voice, never changed her mind, and never let the room shape her. It wasn't comfortable, but it was real, and I don't think I've forgotten it for a day since." The host asked, "Did she teach you anything?" Rachel replied, "She reminded me that silence is not surrender. Sometimes it's just the sound of someone refusing to turn themselves into an explanation." Pam Bondi never followed up. No column, no interview, no tweet. But when she walked into closed-door meetings, hearings, or strategy sessions, people spoke to her more carefully. Not because she was feared, because they understood she would not correct what they misunderstood. She would let them sit in it. And some people found that more difficult than confrontation, because it meant owning their part of the distortion. At a small press event, a reporter finally asked, "Ms. Bondi, do you wish the Maddow interview had aired?" She replied, "What aired would have been edited. What happened can't be." Then she turned and walked out of frame. 3 months later, Rachel Maddow stood at the back of a university lecture hall. She wasn't speaking. She was listening. A graduate student was presenting her thesis, Narrative Collapse. What happens when public discourse resists the performance frame? On the screen behind her were 2 chairs, a still image from the unaired interview. Pam Bondi on one side, Rachel on the other. No names, just posture, just presence. The student said, "Neither of them moved. That's what made it hard to watch. That's what made it matter." Rachel didn't raise her hand. She didn't correct her. She just listened. And when the student finished, Rachel walked out quietly, notebook in hand, and wrote down one sentence on the last page. Not every conversation needs to resolve. Some just need to remain. Pam Bondi, meanwhile, sat alone in a courthouse hallway. No camera, no crowd, just the sound of heels and closing doors and paperwork being handed from one quiet person to another. She didn't want the interview to resurface. She didn't need it to. What mattered had already happened, not in how it ended, but in how she held her shape in a space designed to press. And when people referenced it, as they sometimes did, she never clarified, corrected, or leaned into it. She just said, "I showed up. I stayed. That's all." The footage remained unreleased. But inside the network, people still referred to it. The Bondi segment, they called it. Not because of what was said, but because of what it didn't allow. It didn't allow collapse. It didn't allow spin. It didn't allow the room to come out unchanged. And in an industry trained to wrap everything in closure, that was the most disruptive ending of all. Rachel and Pam never spoke again. But they didn't need to. They had already said the quiet thing out loud, and let the silence finish it.